Whoops, sorry. Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are on this tumultuous fast forward planet wrapped in a pandemic and dealing with all kinds of other issues simultaneously. Big chunks of the world are on fire. Other chunks of the world are being pummeled with Atlantic Ocean hurricanes. We're in an infodemic around the pandemic, which has been a frequent focus of sessions on this webcast. I'm Andy Revkin at the Earth Institute, Columbia University, at our initiative on communication and sustainability. And the whole idea is to figure out ways to make information matter on a planet where the main challenge often is just cutting through noise, as you've seen lately, I'm sure, if you're trying to track anything from politics to how to get out of this pandemic. I have great guests today, and today we're going to talk about, for scholars and scientists who are either emerging or feeling like they're left out of the conversation around issues they care about that relate to their expertise. The conversation evolved starting around 2011 in Australia, and now it's a global enterprise through which scientists can kind of enter the public sphere and create a place, an interactive knowledge exchange that might not otherwise happen. It's kind of like the New York Times op-ed space, or Forbes has a commentary space now where people like Marshall Shepard, the climatologist and weather expert in Georgia, can find homes. There's medium.com, there's Substack now. A lot of my friends are generating their own newsletters on Substack. And so we're going to dig in with Beth Daley, the editor of the US edition of The Conversation, and Jennifer Weeks, who's the Environment and Energy, right?
Yep.
Editor. On how to get the most, well, so people can learn what the conversation is and, figure out some lessons in the second half. We'll talk just about writing tips too. So it's great to have you both here today.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
I want to share one thing too before we start in on the specifics, which is my own journey as a journalist to saying, wow, there's this interesting thing out there, which I think is one of the useful aspects of this. So back in 2014, I woke up one day and there was a big volcano erupting in Papua New Guinea. And as a journalist, I was pretty interested in that because I deal with disaster risk a lot, not just climate. And so I think it was on Facebook. I saw this picture, just blew my mind, right? And so I started Googling around. So who knows anything about this volcano? And this is the piece that ended up running in .earth later that day, Dynamic Planet Under the Volcano in Papua New Guinea. And among the people I found was a young man at the time who was getting he was a doctoral student at University College London, Robin Wiley. And I found him. He had written this really great piece on this volcano really swiftly. Here's his story that ran that day. Move over Iceland. Tavurvur in Papua New Guinea is the volcano to watch. And I would not have found him if it hadn't been for this doctoral candidate posting on The Conversation. So I got more focused on that. And I was at Pace University at the time. And I wrote my own. So I heard they were launching a US edition. I can't remember, Beth, if you were there at that time already, so someone had reached out and said, do you want to write something? And it was like the inaugural moment or so. That was 2014. So I wrote this piece on what is essentially the theme of my life right now. How do you cut through the world? How do you make progress on the world's problems through communication in an online environment that's changing rapidly, et cetera? So that was my sort of journey to the conversation. But now I want to hear a little bit more from Beth first, and maybe then Jennifer, about what is the conversation, a quick sense of how it evolved and spread, and then who can write for it and the like.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I knew you wrote. I didn't realize it was all the way back in 2014. I've been at The Conversation as editor and general manager now for probably a little bit more than a year and a half. My background, I knew Andy, obviously, through my time at the Boston Globe as environment reporter. But when I first heard about The Conversation, I was sort of was actually going to go back to the Boston Globe and work again when I heard about this new journalism model, which was so unique. It kind of blew my mind, which was that it wouldn't be expert journalists writing on subjects. It would be the experts themselves writing with the collaboration of really good subject-specific editors like Jenny, who's been covering the environment, energy for years and years. And lo and behold, I found out it started, as you said, Andy, in 2011 in Australia. It's now in 9 countries. It's in Indonesia, all of Africa, though it's based in South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, as we said, Canada, UK, Spain, and the US, and France. And looks like 2 other editions are going to be starting soon too, in a couple other countries. And yeah, it's a really cool model. So the way it works is, I want to tell you a little bit about the funding model, because I think that's really important, because it kind of feeds in a little bit about who can write. We like to say we don't do traditional op-ed. So what you see on the Washington Post op-ed or New York Times, you might find articles like that on our website. But we try to do one explanatory journalism. We're trying to say, like, hey, explain something we don't know about. Like, what is a pandemic? What is an epidemic?
Right.
Second thing is we try to do really smart analysis and obviously expert commentary. Everything that's published in our on the conversation, about 10 to 12 stories a day, has to be backed up by fact-based evidence. So if you see a reference to a study, it'll be a hyperlink to a DOI reference backing that up. And we're really rigorous about that. And we'll talk more about the process in a second, and Jenny can sort of walk everyone through, because it's quite rigorous. As I said, we publish 10 to 12 stories a day across a wide level of disciplines. We have environment and energy. We have politics and society. We have a very big science desk, technology, arts and culture. What am I missing, Jenny? Ethics and religion, nonprofit philanthropies, and so
education.
Oh, education. Yeah.
Business. You say business? Yeah, they're across the top there.
Yeah. So it's general newspaper a long time ago, but with the experts are based in academia. And our funding model is we're about a $4 million organization right now, and we have about 32 employees soon. And the way it works is that about half our money, well, maybe 48%, comes from foundations like Sloan, Lumina, some big foundations. Gates was a starter, and Packard and a bunch of others, Betty Moore. And then the other half comes from universities who support our mission to democratize knowledge for the public good. And the way they do that is they pay a fee to us. And what they get in return is not a guarantee of stories. We don't do that. We're an independent newsroom. So we take content, even though Harvard's not a member, we take content from Harvard. We take content from California University of Pennsylvania, HBCUs. But what we do is every morning we have a news meeting where we, like any newsroom, talk about what stories we want to cover that day or for the following week. And our stories, I should say, are not usually super quick turnarounds. We tend to come up like 2 or 3 days after breaking news stories. That's our sweet spot. Or just sort of really curious stories that don't appear anywhere else, or new research.
And that's, by the way, that's sort of a good sweet spot in the news cycle, because something breaks and everyone will be all over that anyway. But then coming in after that first day or two with the context or a bit deeper knowledge seems like a smart place to fit.
Yeah, or we come in like with RBG dying. We had a bunch of stories in the past we'd written about her work early on with gender rights. So we did something called a retop. We had a scholar work on it, and it got out and got in many publications. But what we do also say for our member universities is that when we think of ideas ourselves, we do a call out every morning to those universities and say, hey, we're looking for a scholar on, remote learning for immigrant communities, and students, for example. And I should say those university partners, while certainly they're small universities sometimes, like Bowdoin or Amherst College, they're also the entire UC system. So Berkeley, UCLA, we've University of South USC, entire USC in South Carolina, the whole UMass system. So there's like hundreds of thousands of scholars we ask first if they have expertise in something. And sometimes they do, hopefully. And if they don't, then we tend to go outside. At the same time, we're constantly fielding pitches every week from scholars from anywhere who give us ideas. And if they're good enough ideas, we take them. And we say that's, Jenny's going to commission a great story on monarch butterflies. And I can't remember if you edited that, Jenny.
Yes.
But
I hounded that guy for a year to get that story out of him. Through his dissertation defense and into his new faculty appointment.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
So that's one of the challenges, I guess, is getting people to break away to do this.
It is.
It is, because the scholars write for free. The universities may support us or may not, but you really have to have a mission to really want to share your research with the public. And I think most scholars want that, and I think they get into academia because they really want to help the world. I think to be blunt, along the way, academia has not embraced the public sphere as much. They've lost that connection. I mean, some are really trying to get it back, like University of Michigan, many other universities that support us, to really try to connect the the scholarship of their academics to the public, so it has real meaning. And that can be a pretty hard process, which we'll tell you about in a second. Let me finish my spiel, and then so we're constantly getting pitches. We get, I think at the height of the pandemic, Jenny, it was like 500 pitches a week, 400 or 500 roughly. I think at the very height.
I only look at the total from my desk, and that's bad enough.
So I mean,
certainly certain desks like politics desk just dominates everything this year because politics is what it is. But it doesn't mean that other desks don't get a lot too. And I mean, in a big week, I'll get 30, 40 pitches, and balance that against the fact that I can turn around 3 or 4 stories a week.
Right. It's a small percentage that get accepted. Right. So knowing how to pitch the conversation is really critical.
We'll talk about that in a minute for sure.
Yeah. So let me just finish so once you get through the process that we'll talk about, which can be rigorous, and you have to kind of go in it with a smile, and that you really want to get your research read by someone, is that one of our greatest powers is our amplification network. We meet the standards of the Associated Press. So all our content, every single piece, it goes on an automatic feed to the Associated Press. 6 months ago, we signed a major deal with Yahoo News. So all our content is directly fed into Yahoo News, which gets us about 2 million reads every month right now. MSN, and we're signing lots of other deals. And a lot of people find us through organic searches. So most scholars who write for us tend to be in about 10 to 12 news outlets. I mean, sometimes there'll be like 10 reads in the San Francisco Chronicle, but often they're much greater. And they're, on CNN, Washington Post runs us a lot of the time, Scientific American. Who else, Jenny?
The Globe.
Oh yeah, the Boston Globe.
The butterfly story is in Fast Company for some reason. They liked it, so great. There's hundreds and hundreds of outlets, and they go all the way from CNN and Times, sort of at the big end, all the way down to the Punxsutawney Spirit, which takes lots of our stuff because they need lots of copy 364 days of the year. So
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
go ahead, Andy.
Well, if there are a couple more points you want to make in the basic overview, that's great.
That's just it. It's an amplification. And when scholars do write for us, if you're thinking about it, I will say that there's an added benefit. Is that a lot of journalism outlets go to us, like you did, Andy, way back then, to find scholars that they can use. We did a partnership with On Point with NPR shortly before the pandemic about truth, and they used us to find scholars they knew who wanted to explain their work to the public. About 50% of our scholars get asked to be on subsequent radio shows or TV shows. They're cited more because their work is obviously linked to in our content, and they're asked to collaborate and get book deals. So it's kind of we like to think we're helping the public mostly, but we're really helping scholars to really get their work out there and enhance their research.
And I assume their funders are happy about this too, the whole broader impacts question.
I mean, they are. I mean, we hear a lot still that writing for the public doesn't matter for tenure and promotion. It doesn't in a lot of places still, and I find that to be unfortunate and not like many other countries, frankly.
That's so weird.
Mm-hmm. There's also a lot of benefits they get that aren't quite so easy to count, but that lots of them have said to me, which is, a lot of them have said, having to write this in a really succinct, short way has helped me really formulate it much more clearly. I have my elevator speech now, I can do it.
Right.
I give better job talks. They've said, a lot of them say they use our articles in their classes, especially with undergrads. So it just helps. They've said it helps them with grant proposals and all kinds of things where you have to really summarize what you're doing and get to the point very clearly and simply.
Yeah.
So
maybe Jennifer, can you talk a little bit about the environment, energy, sort of vertical, like I don't know, or track?
Yes. Yeah. whatever. This is my desk right here. We cover pretty much anything that you can think of as sort of an environment or energy issue. The big buckets are pollution, conservation of everything, land, water, resources, regulation, climate change, and we also do some scientific process stories about things like science advising and scientists getting involved in protests, things like that. Also, a lot of our food and agriculture coverage ends up here, even if it's not really a purely environmental issue, because those tend to be very sort of cross-desk issues, but it's a special interest that I have. So we've done a lot in the last few years on things like techniques that are changing agriculture, no-till agriculture and cover crops and all these kinds of ideas. My background is in political science and public policy, with a lot of science picked up along the way as I moved into journalism. So I would say at least half the stories, the environment stories we publish, are science-focused stories from all different disciplines. But we also do stories by environmental lawyers, economists, public policy scholars, meteorologists, once in a while, someone from architecture or history, another discipline. So I like it because it's a very interdisciplinary beat, and there's lots of different ways to come at it. What else to say about it? I mean, I think that's a good sort of brief overview so far of what we do.
So you mentioned where you do outreach, you actually come to people with the offer to write, and then how much of the people who end up publishing on the platform are coming to you versus people you're sort of reaching out to cultivate?
I think that varies by desk, because some of our desks, the politics desk, is flooded with pitches all the time. Probably half at least of what I publish take and publish is pitched to me, and the other half I reach out for. Some of our desks, like education, I think have to do a lot more sort of reaching out, because they're just sort of smaller and more sort of specific beats that people may not be sort of flocking to, but there are people doing really interesting research there, and so they do more reaching out to them.
Yeah. It does vary through desk, but it does kind of, last time I looked, which was a few months ago, it was like it's close to 50-50. Well, maybe it's 60% pitches. I mean, look, I think the strength of our model is that, like, the scholars have these ideas. I mean, who knew that there was someone at Stanford who studied why zebras have stripes, or we have this like thing we do from the curious to the serious. So learning about new ideas, sometimes it really blows your mind out. People working on new ways of creating natural colors from the Amazon, and but we also think of ideas where we're like, let's do a story about, like, what is a musical note, or what does it mean to be statistically significant? Something as basic as that.
That's fascinating. So that curious to the serious, is that your inner mantra, or is that actually is that a line of pieces, tagged pieces?
No, it's kind of an internal mantra by someone who's been here, Bruce Wilson, who started with us, and it's his tagline. But it kind of really encapsulates us, because we're serious, right? Like we're the news, but we also realize that academia is filled with people who just are asking questions that are just interesting, right? That's what intellectual discovery is all about.
Right. We do have a set of articles called Curious Kids that are questions that we've gotten from actual kids, and we always have the kid's name on there, and they're really fun. I mean, some of them are things you'd expect from kids, like they're about burping and stuff, but lots of them are things like I had one that was, where does beach sand come from? And a geologist who'd written a bunch for us wrote this wonderful thing about how it starts as a rock rolling down a hill, and ends up a grain of sand on the beach, and traced the whole process through. And right. How deep is the ocean? So we had an ocean scientist who wrote about the deepest part of the Marianas Trench. And they're not branded as Curious Kids when the publishers take them. So those are adults reading them, and they get thousands of views.
So have you adjusted, or do you build new tracks? Like, here we are in a pandemic. This is not going away, right, for a long time. And I know you have a health page, I'll just show it here, which obviously would have a lot of pandemic coverage right now. But is there a point when you have can you shift and create a track for that, or do you have to add staff? It must be amazingly nonstop when you get something that's persistent and in the news like this.
Yeah, I think to say is COVID has taxed everyone across everywhere.
Yeah, that is safe to say.
I mean, every. So yeah, we actually added what was going to be. We got a grant from the Hearst Foundations to work at the intersection of environment and health that Jenny's helping spearhead to train scholars at that intersection to be public scholars. Unfortunately, the person we'd hoped to help Jenny out or give Jenny a second hand is now working a lot mostly with health, although she's doing a teeny bit now with hurricanes, I believe. And yeah, we added one other person to the health, another person on the science that covers like vaccines. I mean, one thing we wanted to do with COVID, and I think it's relatively paid off, is try to, you know, we have a lens into the front line of academia and how to solve this grand challenge. And so we're doing a lot of stories that have, you know, vaccines, testing, you know, we're up there giving landscape overviews. So yeah, it's been really, really busy. And I'm really proud. Like last year when I had first started, we were so happy. We had like 7 million reads a month, and we were 20 last month. We're like, it's going up a great deal. And it's a lot of it has to do with initially COVID, but now others are learning about us and taking all our content. So it's been an important part in breaking.
So Jennifer, I love this phrase, public scholar. How do you define a public scholar?
I would say a scholar who understands, excuse me, that there's a big public audience for what they know, and it's different from the academic audience, but it is equally important in the big picture, and we wish that it was equally important in their working lives. And for some of them it is, for some of them not so much. It depends on how their university approaches that. But and my husband's a professor, I should say. So I mean, I understand, you know, academic workloads and the drivers that they have to meet. He's someone who was in public life before he went into academia, so he really knows how to sort of work both sides, but a lot of them don't. And so, you know, but I find that a lot of them, when I reach out to a scholar, because I see they've written something interesting and I just want to call them and say, hey, would you do a short piece for us? They're like, wow, thank you. That's really cool. I think it would be really great to tell more people about this. So, you know, I mean, it's not an easy role to play, but I think that the people who embrace it really find that it's very satisfying.
And what's the you mentioned the word training, Beth? What does that look like? Or is that informal? Is it just through the back and forth thing, or do you do? Are there webinars or seminars or?
Well, I'll let Jenny talk about what the process is like once a pitch is accepted or we reach a scholar. But like for our member universities, we train them about what we do, how to pitch us. So we do those kind of workshops. The Hearst one that I reference is going to be the first ever. We're going to have 3 webinars. One, how to write for the, Jenny, you can answer this better than I can. One, how to write for the conversation.
Right. Well, it's going to be a 3-part series. The first part is going to be, why should you share your scholarship? Because that's a big question for a lot of them when you first approach them is, why should I do this? I have, you know, a funding proposal due. I have exams to grade. I have, you know, this meeting, you know, why should I do this too? So why should you share your scholarship? And we're going to show how it can be good for your own career, for your school, and for the public. The second piece will be very, very basic, how to work with the media, like, you know, how to deal with it if you get a press call. Do you have to talk to them right then or not? And we're cribbing a lot of that from Compass Science Communication, the training organization, which I've done some training with, which I think is really sort of the gold standard for learning about those things. And then the third piece will be how to write for us, which is a presentation we give at our partner schools all the time. I mean, when you're a partner school, one thing you get is editor visits every year. So they get these, you know, I or colleagues of mine from other desks go out to, you know, Colorado State or University of Washington or whatever, spend a couple days and do these, you know, PowerPoint talks where we talk about, here's how it works. Here's what your interface with our publishing system looks like. Here's what your draft will look like when it's all marked up with edits. Here's how we'll communicate. You know, here's what it'll come out like. So we go through that, you know, and we do a lot of that. We do it with communications officers at member schools and also with scholars themselves.
So that sounds like it's, in a way, the lockdown affords a great amplification possibility there, where you can do, you know, we all think of the constraints of online learning, but now you can visit a school, like you mentioned, small universities and colleges are like, it feels like it might be easier to sell the concept to schools now because they wouldn't have to think about those, you know, operationally getting you there or whatever. I don't know. I'm asking that. That's sort of like a question. I mean, does this feel like an opportunity or
you know, I just, from a budgetary perspective, I was like scared. Like, when the pandemic hit, like, look what's happening in higher ed. It's bottomed out.
Yeah.
Like, Michigan $1 billion, so we are, and we have been fearful that we're going to lose our members because of that. It turns out that hasn't happened. We've certainly lost some, but we're adding 2 new. We just added Johns Hopkins School of Nursing. Next, we have 2 new big universities coming on next month. Can't mention them yet until the deal is signed. But, yeah, so we're lucky, and I don't think it's the web. I don't think it's the online stuff that's enticed them. It's more that I think our amplification has gotten so big, and we're getting more play. So I think they see this as an extension, frankly, of their research office, and to some extent their comms office. So it's been really, it's been really gratifying.
How many universities total participate that way? Formally.
60. It's hard to say what a university is, right? That the whole UC system, that's like one university.
Oh, right. Very good point.
So but that's really like 11 campuses or 15, I forget. So we're like 65, 66, I think now. And we'll go up to 68 with, University of Texas San Marcos is joining us in October 1st.
Oh, you told.
Remember that.
Breaking news.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really nice. It's because we're really trying to like most of the news media, we're really taking a hard look with Black Lives Matter at diversity issues, and we really feel. I mean, if I can get on my soapbox for a second about this role of experts, right? Like when you write for the conversation, you become many times your work is amplified. You're asked to speak on TV, and you're an expert, and we have a significant role to play. And I'd say we're uniquely situated to really roll up experts to the media in a way that has never been done before. And we're really committed. We have a historically Black college coming on soon. And
right.
So we're really, really focused on that.
Yeah. And I think that just one thing to say about that is that writing for us is a way for scholars to sort of learn to be that public expert that is maybe a little less threatening than sort of just doing media training and saying, call reporters and tell them you've got something to say and brief them, because when you do it for us, you get to metaphorically hold the pen. You get to say what you want to say. We editors try to help you say it in a way that will maximize how many people will read it. But I mean, every scholar has to approve their article before we can publish it. They have to formally hit a button or sign off and say, yes, it's good, go ahead. So they have an element of control in this process. And also, we try to make the editing process very cooperative. We have journalistic standards that we try to help everybody meet. But when something doesn't work, we explain why. And if they're set on a title that they think is really just a wonderful, hilarious pun, and we think, well, it's hilarious, but no one will understand it. We try to have a sort of a nice conversation about why that is and why, the difference of a word in a title can really make a lot of difference. And often they're very interested to learn those things because they've never had to think about something in a journalistic way like that. So anyway, just, I think that it's a good way for scholars to get into communicating with the public because they have an element of control here that they don't in a lot of other forms of working with the media.
Actually, and just that whole idea of intersecting with the media in a more direct way, like you both have journalism backgrounds, and you're essentially shaping their thinking in a way that they might not have had the opportunity to have that experience before.
Yeah. I'm wondering, Andy, like as we talk about the process a little bit more, I'm wondering if it's worth if I show you what like a dashboard would look like.
I would love to see that. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
I'll let Jenny, maybe, I don't know, it might be useful to explain like how it works, Jenny, because it is pretty rigorous and
sure.
All in a little bit. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so I'll just explain it. And then if you want to pull one up, that's fine. So a scholar sends us their draft. First of all, let me say, either we reach out to a scholar or they pitch us, we take the pitch. The first thing that happens, unless they have already written for us, is we have a phone call with them that is typically 20, 30 minutes, explaining our tone, explaining our process, explaining what we're looking for, making sure they understand we're going to publish your piece on our website. It's going to be under a license that will go out that lets it be republished in other outlets. Those outlets want things that are not more than 1,000 words long. And you're writing for the general public, not people who are coming saying, tell me the latest about, carcinogenic, something or other. There are people who are looking at their phone or something, looking to learn something interesting, and they might be interested in your topic or some vastly different thing. And so you have to appeal to them.
Yeah.
So we have a pretty in-depth conversation about that. And, what approach do you want to take to this? And, we'll back and forth with them. Then they get a detailed assignment brief. And like when I do it, I always link to some articles we've published that are on similar topics and say, please look at these articles, notice what they link to, look at the kind of wording they use. So we try to be really thorough in sort of explaining what we want and what we're looking for. Then when they send us a draft and it goes into our online editing system, they get at least 2 rounds of edits from us. The main editor goes through it at least once. Then there's a second editor that looks at it. So I and our senior health editor trade off reviewing each other's articles, which is really nice because
that's a good idea.
I learn health from her. She learns environment stuff from me. It works really well. And all our desk editors do that. So
yeah, it's actually slow down a beat there, because that's really important to, I think what you do there too, is you're avoiding the kind of lock-in we all get when if you're too familiar with energy and environment, you're not looking at the story with fresh eyes. That can lead to, missing important basic questions. So that idea of sort of trading off seems really cool.
Yeah. So that's built into our process. The scholars get a say in not just the text, but in the image choices, which is not something in a lot of publications that the author gets to do. Sure. We don't make them responsible for providing visuals, but we tell them all the different things we can use, photos, video, tweets, Instagram posts, GIFs. We can make charts if they have a data set, and we say, if you have things you'd like to propose, go ahead and let us know, and we'll tell you if they'll work. Otherwise, the editor puts some stuff in and then says to the scholar, what do you think of these? Do you like these? Do they work? I had one once that was about saving Javan rhinos, and his only issue was, that's a great photo at the top, but that's a Sumatran rhino and we need a Javan rhino.
Right.
Like, okay, fine, we'll find the Javan rhino photo. We had to call the World Wildlife Fund and beg them to send something. So anyway, but they're involved in all of that. If they don't like the way a caption's worded, we can work with them on how to word it. And then we actually have a lot of discussion about titles with them, because since we don't have subheads on our titles, the one line of the title has to tell everything. And a lot of scholars don't get that. And so we try and explain that. And they learn a little bit about how journalism works, which I think is interesting for them.
Yeah, I'm looking at these titles. They're pretty informative. Looser standards for showerheads could save a lot of water and money down the drain. Send a lot.
Yeah. It helps us a lot with SEO too. Yes. I mean, when people type in organic searches in Google, like what is we tend to do really well because we got the validity behind it.
Right. We have several really smart social media relations people on staff whose job it is to get the articles placed. And so they work a lot with us editors saying, that title could use a little work. Hello,
Right.
And we have workshops talking about them and how to, write better ones.
Let me just click here and just look. Do you do, are there comments or not comments?
There are comment forums at the bottom. I'm not sure that one has picked up a lot of comments, but I can just scroll down and we'll see.
Because that can be a lot of work too. It depends on the what your tool is. And let's see here.
Yeah, I think that I don't think it's drawn any.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you an article if you want to do it, or I can show it that drew a lot of comments.
What was it on?
It was on, well, I'll tell you that the headline on it was, yes, eating meat affects the environment, but cows are not killing the climate. So this was by a livestock science professor at UC Davis, who has been very involved in discussions on this for a long time. He found a big mistake in that famous report that the FAO did, Livestock's Long Shadow, that made the argument that worldwide raising livestock created more greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector. Right. And he found that they had not done a perfect sort of end-to-end analysis of both those sectors. They had done end-to-end for livestock, but they hadn't really done it completely for transportation. So they'd really overstated livestock's impact. Yeah. And so and the FAO has acknowledged his argument and corrected it, but metaphorically, the horse was out of the barn on that argument, and so he's debunking it. He wrote this piece for us. 262 comments. They'll pop up there if you
I see.
Hang in there for a second. Yeah, or hit show all comments.
Yeah.
And he was great. He some of them were very hostile.
He's dived in and
he reacted to many of them, and people said, "Oh, you have USDA funding." All our authors disclosed their major funding sources that are relevant to the article. So a lot of people said, "You're funded by USDA. Who cares what you think?" But he was very patient and explained things and talked about where where his position was coming from. And this piece was republished in things from like Grist to Beef Central.
That's
It
really
went
cool.
all over the place. And he ended up, I mean, I don't think that we made him an advocate just by this piece, but he has done things like getting engaged with the people on Capitol Hill who drafted the Green New Deal plan and talking to them about how he thought they had really exaggerated the impact of the livestock industry. So, you know, he has made himself very energetically a public scholar on these issues.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, again, the capacity there to foster that. Well, fostering that capacity in people is something that I'm trying to do here actively. Not always myself. You know, the tasks here are way too large, so I'm trying to build a sort of a collection or a collective of resources and practices that can foster the capacity to not respond in a destructive way.
Yeah. Well, and we moderate the comment forum. So when we know, I mean, climate stories often get, you know, a bunch of draw some trolls, or religion stories sometimes do. Certain Hillary Clinton stories drew a lot of them. So when we know that's happening, we have some very clear standards that are there. No anonymous posting, no personal attacks, no obvious misinformation. And we will delete posts that violate those. There are a lot of people who are good at going right up to the edge and not violating them. And sometimes we have to say to the scholars, look, just, you know, let them shout into the void and wear themselves out.
Yeah. I mean, and I just said, like, a lot of times comments, I mean, we lose control of them, right? Because they go, the Washington Post will run a story, there's a million comments, and scholars can sometimes feel uncomfortable in that space. But it's important to learn.
We tell them they don't have to answer. You know, you can answer if you want. Right. What I usually suggest is, if someone has a good point or an interesting question, it's nice to acknowledge it and, you know, tell them what you want them to know. And then at some point, it's okay to say, got to go grade papers now. Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
By
so
the way,
they're not on the hook to answer every single person, especially if people are being jerks.
Yeah. I just noticed here on Twitter, there was a nice tweet about a video you guys have done. Are you doing more multimedia stuff? Yeah.
So we hired our first multimedia videographer just about little less than a year ago, and this is Lonnie from the Ohio.
Lonnie Thompson.
Lonnie Thompson.
Oh my gosh.
Wife, yeah, and we
oh my gosh, look at that, man. Yeah. I haven't seen them in years. I miss them both. They're great people.
I know. I think I met them at Lamont during like a climate change thing that ages ago, and I just saw that they had gotten some new data, and we did a little video with them. So yeah, so that, I mean, our CMS is really unique. You can actually write, the scholar will write in it and we can write in it, but unfortunately we're rebuilding it and there isn't a great video portal. So we have good videos right now. We're just running them and doing the transcript or Q&A as a story, because that's how they get out in the AP. But we're hoping to ramp that up a lot more in the next year. So yeah, we're a video and
that's great.
Yeah.
There's a question that came in from someone here named Earth.
Oh yeah.
Can you talk more about the republishing?
Yeah. So we are dedicated Creative Commons. Anyone can republish our content as long as they republish it in full. If you want to edit it down, you got to let us know, and then we have to go talk to the scholar. And secondly, you got to carry our counterpixel, and not everyone does, I will say, but we really.
Can you explain what that is for those who might not know?
Yeah, so counterpixel is basically an invisible embed that will track how many reads an article is getting. And I can show you the dashboard why that's so important.
Yeah, if you can pull that up now, that'd be great.
My screen really quick, and right.
Yeah. I'll just say while Beth's doing that, we are Creative Commons attribution, no derivatives. That's the license that we use for the text of articles.
Which means what? Can you just explain that?
Attribution means the republishers have to credit us as the original source, and no derivatives means they can't alter the text in any way so they can't have a shorter version unless they ask us, and we ask the authors, or translation is an alteration. So, I mean, even our partner conversation sites that publish in, say, French or Spanish or Bahasa have to ask the author for permission before they translate it.
Yeah. So can you see my screen?
For some reason, it's not coming up. Usually I see it pop up here.
Okay, sorry, I goofed up. Can you see it now?
Okay. No, try a share. Are you on the share?
Share screen. Hold on a second. Screen share is easiest with two monitors. Don't show the steps again. Okay, I'm going to share.
For some reason, it's not working out.
Hold on. We're going to share your screen. Weird.
I don't know why it's not pulling up here. Usually it pops up as this window that I can then add.
This might work now. Hold on. Anything?
Huh.
Hold on.
I'm still learning some of the mysteries of StreamYard. So
Yeah,
it might,
it's saying that you have to, it says share your screen, your entire screen. Let me just do like application window share. Chrome has lost permission to capture your screen. Follow this. That's very weird.
Do you want me to try?
Yeah, why don't you try? I have your monarch butterfly.
okay.
Sorry about that. Weird.
That's okay. There's plenty to keep talking about. The one thing I wanted to ask you is, do you do fora? Like, when an issue like COVID-19 has emerged and you have 3 or 4 authors who've written pieces that take on different dimensions of it. Have you done forums with them, or do you sort of say, let's do a series on X, like a vaccine confidence series, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, our model. So we just did a series on Lyme disease, actually, like prior to COVID. I'll just use that example, and it wasn't so much. Yeah, I'll talk about SEO in a second. It doesn't so much. It doesn't come out as a series all the time because we publish one-offs, right? But we might do a newsletter. We have about 90,000 people on our newsletter list, and we're growing about 1,000, 2,000 a week, and
Wow.
I know it's really fast. And so we will like say, okay, hey, we did something on Lyme disease. Here's 10 stories that we did, and we've also experimented with short courses. We did a short course on you worked. That's great. On, is that Jenny's screen?
No, it's me at this point. I imagine that you're looking at, it would be an internal link that,
yeah, exactly.
Like you can share it with me and then have me open it. So just keep trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, my system is kind of hung up on trying to do it, so I don't.
Oh wait, no, there it is. I see it.
Yeah, someone got it.
There we go.
Is this the monarch butterfly one you're seeing?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, it's the author's dashboard. I think it was trying to do both you and me at the same time there for a minute. So yeah.
Well, here we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is DeAndre Green at the University of Michigan, who wrote about Jenny edited monarch butterflies last week. And so what he gets is access to the dashboard, and his university does if he's a member. If you're not a member, you don't really get access as a university.
The scholar has access to their own metrics, but the school does not.
Yeah, and that's important. Yeah. So basically, he published a story last week, and he's already had 21,060 readers. I will say that I think this captures only about 60 to 70% of reads. A lot of our content is republished in those old-fashioned things called newspapers. And we have like a service that captures that. Yahoo News, this is not captured in. We get a lot of reads through Yahoo News, MSN, a bunch of other stuff. Okay, so basically you get this, and you're like, okay, my story. I want to see how many people read it. 4 days after, 5 days after. Right. You'll see tweets. You'll see how many people the reach of it, and you can keep going down. Well, here are all the tweets that people did about it. Comments,
most recent ones. Yeah.
Comments on our site, not other sites. What countries people were reading it from. It was published in The Conversation, where it got about 14,000 reads. EcoWatch, Lake County News, which is one of these tiny places. Flipboard, Fizz.org, Fast Company, Albany Times Union. You start seeing the Edwardsville Intelligencer, 9, Newsblur, The Hour, Houston Chronicle, and all these little tiny reads. But the real power, I'd say, of stories that are not immediately, like super breaking news. They have a long tail. One of our most popular stories today is on slavery. It was the first story we ever published in 2015. So, or 14, I can't remember. So anything I could go into more detail here, but
that's fantastic. Well, that also gives, the scholar something to show to their tenure or their at least communications office to say, I'm doing my job.
Right. And especially if it's a school that rewards public outreach, then the idea is for them to put these metrics into tenure packages. And if you do more than one article for us, then your dashboard aggregates all your metrics.
Yes. So
I keep hearing about schools that are adjusting their tenure assessment to include public outreach. Is that something that you think your work can help to really push forward that pressure on schools more generally? In other words, that is a big impediment. I remember in 2010 having a conversation with Ralph Cicerone at a meeting at the National Academy of Sciences on how to make the National Academy of Sciences meaningful. This is before he passed away, obviously. And he, he said basically heads of departments have to die, to get that, at the school level, we were talking about should they go on a speaking tour to universities, Cicerone and others. And he said, no, it's not the presidents of universities, it's the heads of departments.
Yeah.
And so is this something that, or even this conversation we're having now, can we send it around saying it's time to break those barriers? I don't know.
Look, I have probably bias and strong feelings about this while I'm here. It's like, it's the old thing. You're being funded by the government. You're being funded by the public. You have a responsibility. More and more universities are really, I think, buying into this. University of Michigan is just fantastic. They believe in this. University of Florida, many others. But we're finding that some schools where it's not been sort of a muscle they flexed is to convince department heads and their faculty. So they're actually, we found out, we didn't know this was happening, that they're paying their scholars if they get a story in the conversation.
Yeah.
They pay them. Like at University of South Carolina, it was, was it $250 or something? And
something like that. Indiana does it. I forget who else.
$500. And so it was just sort of like this incentive that when it stopped now, but it's really gotten this muscle flexed where scholars feel, particularly younger ones, I'd say postdocs and those who are not been tenured. I just have observed this, not true blanketly, certainly, that they really feel this desire to help the world, and they want to get their content.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
At Columbia, Bollinger calls this the fourth purpose. Since schools have internal and external reasons for being, and President Bollinger at Columbia he's a big fan of breaking down those barriers so that there's more interface with communities in ways that actually can improve people's lives.
Yeah, I think once people see the impact it can have, it's more convincing, but it's upfront. It can be hard. Someone at one partner school told me, a woman who was the government affairs rep said, I take all our stories when I go see the legislature every year. So, once they see that you can really sort of show people that way.
There's a question that David Barnstone posted. Any tips for scientific societies to help their members pitch story ideas?
Well, we have a couple of scientific societies that are partner organizations.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's the Geographers, Association of American Geographers, and who else? I'm blinking right now.
They actually are. There was like sort of a pilot project, Jenny, and they're not anymore. But we've been trying to figure out how we could do better. And it was sort of it worked. It has to be a society that has our mission at base, talking to a World Health, not the World Health Organization, but I'm forgetting the name of it. A health organization,
American Public Health Association or something like that.
Yeah. But anyway, but the idea is we want people to pitch us, but we really, what we're doing now is speaking at conferences, letting people know about us. There's still like a lot of people don't even know what the conversation is. They may have read our story. So going to these scientific societies, and they're so big and so large, the bureaucracy sometimes can be quite big. The best way I'd say is get the communications people familiar with the conversation and have us do a workshop or something with a set group of people. One thing we've learned is like universities are so big and are so disparate and decentralized that it's a lot of work to explain and for people to get the conversation, even if they're a member. Like we have a buddy system. We have to work with everyone and say, hey, you have like thousands of scholars, let's talk to 20. Then they talk to 20 and, it kind of grows from there. So I don't know.
Always moving around, the communications people change. It's just this constant reaching out, re-educating, reconnecting, pushing it down layer by layer through the system.
And again, there is this morass is not the right word. There's an array of options online. As I said, there's Medium and Substack. And I think everyone feels a little bit overwhelmed still about what I think you've laid out pretty effectively here is that there's an array of assets that come with this. It's not just a place to, like Substack, you just have to you're doing it yourself. You're not vetted. There's not that editorial, working with an editor actually is an important thing, So, So is that something that, even Medium and Forbes, I think they're unedited. You just plunk it out there.
Yeah, it's like I used to be a blogger on HuffPost. You would post anything and be like, "Oh, that mistake," and we really believe in evidence-based journalism. We're not
right.
Yeah, so I mean, it's great when people post themselves, but I mean, I'm gonna be honest, scholars make a lot of mistakes, just like journalists make a lot of mistakes. And so you need an editor if you want to be trusted. And I think that's a missing link. And it's really rigorous. I mean, Jenny may get a pitch and you'll edit it. It'll go back to the author, go back to Jenny, maybe go back to the author, back to Jenny again. Then it goes to something we call this old-fashioned Fleet Street term called copy paste, where we have someone
That's why the second editor reviews it.
Yeah, second editor.
Yeah.
It goes back again, then it goes to a final reader, then a copy editor to explain. Yeah, so it's really rigorous.
Yeah, I mean, I do get some scholars who, midway through, they just say, this is taking too long. I just don't want to do this. And I'm like, fine, pop it up on Medium, and some of them will go do that, And I mean, so we recognize that we're not the only venue for scholars out there, and they may not want a long edited process. And I'll say, look, if you want to, toss it up on your blog, do that. If you want to do it on Medium, if you want to really work through it and structure it, then you can work with us, And if you're insisting that it cannot possibly be done in 1,000 words, then if I think it's really good, I'll actually connect them with an editor at another publication that I know that I think is a good fit for them. And I have seen a few pieces come up in places like, what is the Night Science Journalism's? I'm just blanking on their magazine right now. I just saw Undark, where I sent the picture, the scholar who pitched it over there, and said, this is a better fit for those guys over there. So, we know we're not like the perfect forum for everyone. And we try to be really clear with people up front about what kind of stuff we want. Should I talk a little bit before we're done about just sort of how to write for us? Because I want to get that in there. So I had just sort of a few kind of key things that I figured I would lay out. So the first one is be aware of the news cycle. And this is really challenging for scholars because their time horizons and their deadlines are so different from journalist time horizons. But, if you have an idea to do something and it's timely, it's pegged to something happening right now or a date coming up or something like that, just be aware of that. I mean, we get pitches all the time where they say, this is really current, and we accept it. And they say, oh, well, I can send you a draft next month. And we're like, well, it's happening now. They just haven't really thought that through. So I think if they want to write about something and it's something that is relevant at the moment or will be very soon, be prepared to move on it fast. Not all of our pieces get done fast by any means. I mean, we're not, AP running around doing everything in 2 hours. But if you want to do something timely, be ready to sort of hit the ground and go. On the other hand, don't pitch us a piece and say, World Water Day is tomorrow, and here's my idea. Recognize that it's
tomorrow,
a little bit of work to come in.
What is like I know there's no typical timeline, but how long is it between someone, if they do have a good idea, and
once the draft comes in, so they get a pitch accepted, we have the conversation. I say, all right, today's October 1st, send me your draft October 21st. If it comes in October 21st, a bunch of other things there may be a wildfire and a flood and other stuff that I have to deal with, so it sits for a while. But once we take it up, it just takes usually a couple days to do. And if it's something where it's in the news right now, then we do it right now.
Yeah, like we're doing Jenny's doing a lot of breaking news on wildfires, and we're doing, hurricane stuff. So it's just, and we have shorter formats too. We're trying. It's been challenging, to be honest with you, but we're trying to do like 5 questions on X or 300 words on Y, and just help scholars.
Yeah, I would say just picking up on that one thing, again, these are just sort of ways that scholars aren't usually rewarded for thinking. Writing short can be a good thing. I mean, scholars have such an instinct to go really broad and synthetic and try to sort of cover, the whole territory in a piece and go, oh, sure, I can do that in 1,000 words, until they actually try to draft it and realize that that's more like an abstract for them than an article. So just really understanding the idea of just enough. Just enough information and then stop. Whereas their whole instinct is, here's my research, here's the caveats, here's the exceptions, here's the other case study. You don't have to sort of throw all that other stuff in there. So I think that's an important thing. And I think understanding that a really simple explainer can be super useful to people. People just have sort of these immediate questions they want to know. I mean, we did one of these 5 questions answered back in May, when the New York Times ran that story about the Asian giant hornets out in the Pacific Northwest, that said, it was a weird story because it was in May, and it said 6 months ago, someone found a nest and then one other stray insect from this Asian giant hornet species. And they've been trying to figure out ever since then, are they here? And everybody started going, murder hornets, all over the place. We actually, we had the luck to connect with an entomologist at the University of Florida who's Japanese and who had grown up in Japan and knew these things and actually gotten stung by one. And he did this 5 questions answered for us about Asian giant hornets, and he actually said, let's just call them giant hornets after the first mention. Really good, simple answers, loads and loads of reads. So, short and to the point can be really good. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good. So I've got to post this, theconversation.com/US/pitches
Yeah.
is a place where people can find out how to make that initial contact. And again, you reprised here, timely is good. Evidence-based is essential.
Yes.
Explainers are welcome, not just, policy prescriptions. Timeless, plain English can work. And as you were just saying, short is okay. Although you were stressing this is not a blog. Can we just talk about that a little bit more? Having been a blogger and a writer.
Beth, do you want to take that?
I sometimes get blurred the distinctions. Sometimes I forget what the definition of a blog is. We're a website on the web that's rigorously edited. .earth was rigorously edited. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I think Jenny jump in here, but we're not like a place where we just throw stuff up, which I think sometimes people confuse that with a blog, which I don't think is the case. But
Right.
You have to really, you register. Like when you want to pitch, you got to register, show your academic affiliation.
Right.
You got to answer 5 really simple questions like what's the significance, what's the story, key points, why you, why are you writing? You have to have expertise. We're not looking for someone who wants to opine about something because they're an academic. They entomology, they can write about Trump. You know what I mean? Like we won't allow that. And that's really one of our biggest, Jenny, you want to jump in? Like we get a lot of people write full length stories before they submit it to us. And that's like a big no-no because and they're often opinion based and they don't really get at the heart of what we're trying to do, which is more nuanced, which is evidence-based explanatory analysis and expert commentary.
Yeah. And then one other thing about the blog point that's important is that when we offer our pieces under Creative Commons license to republishers, they want to know they're getting something new. And so authors when they sign an agreement to write for us, it actually has to say, this is new original material that has not appeared elsewhere. So you can't take stuff that you've had on your website or something like that. If you've published it anywhere, we're not going to just take it and post it and republish it. Right. You can certainly take it and take the ideas and rework them. We all believe in recycling that way, but you can't just take that stuff and hand it over to us. So that's one reason it's important to know that we're not a blog where you can just sort of put whatever up there.
No, that makes tons of sense. One thing I wanted to, do you have to dissuade or explain to people, this isn't a place to just publish here's my exciting new paper? In other words, someone has a research paper coming out and their main focus is getting that amplified. Is that part of the mix sometimes?
Sometimes it's part of the mix. We struggle with new research because it has to be in the context of what's out there already, right? So you need a landscape overview of it. It has to be important, people pitch us, stuff all the time that we're like, this is not, important enough yet. And the other thing we have to be careful about is being too promotional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's tricky because, for conventional science reporting, if you're reporting on a new study, you would summarize what the study did. You'd get a quote from the scholar who led it or one of the authors of the study. Here's why it's important. Then you'd go to someone else in that field who didn't work on the study and say, what do you think? Is this interesting? And ours, by definition, our sole author written by one of the authors of the study or a group of them. And so one thing we do with those stories is really try and say, what are the limits of what you did? What would be the wrong conclusions to draw from this? So we try and counterbalance that some that way. But, and when someone pitches us and says, I have a new study coming out, we're like, okay, what's it about? Why is it interesting? Why is it relevant? And we turn down plenty of pitches that are just where we're sort of like, well, that's a great advance in material science, but I can't really see how we'd make that interesting to general interest readers.
Yeah, I do want to say that we've struggled since COVID about peer-reviewed versus not peer-reviewed research. And
right. Especially since COVID.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really hard. Like, I want to bring stuff to the public quickly, but like, I just was like, no more new ventilator stories. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
A few early on because they seemed excited, but then we have to put it in context. That's really what we offer. So we take that really seriously. It's hard, right? Like you peer reviewed stuff is what we tend to publish. So we're actually having an editorial retreat tomorrow to talk a little bit more about that and how we make sure that we're being as responsible as we can be.
I'm showing a scene from an earlier chat here. I started coming up with these labels. Some of these come years ago from my climate journalism, where I said I have warning signs. One is single study syndrome. One is oh god, there's a bunch of them, and essentially they're a way to flag, at least on social media, this is important and interesting, but make sure you understand this is a first stab at something, and science is never determined in one paper, very rarely. So
yeah, and if we had someone pitching a study and making those kind of claims, we would really push back hard on them and probably shoot it down. So I mean, so on our science desk, we have 3 full-time editors, one of whom does a lot of health stories too, because she's very good at all the sort of submolecular stuff. So she does all the CRISPR stories and things like that. So we have 3 science editors, me doing environmental science, health editor does a lot of science, and we all talk very hard about those issues. Do you have one of those placards that says "in mice"?
In mice? No, actually, that's a good idea.
The in mice Twitter feed.
No, but we can come up with 3 or 4 of them.
Whenever a study comes out that's claiming these amazing medical effects, that just retweets it and says "in mice."
That's hilarious. Yeah. Well, this has been a great introduction. I'd love to think we could do more. I can guarantee we could do more. What I'm trying to do here is on the Monday sessions, really are skill building and resource amplification. So today we really did, I think, lay out what the conversation is, for who it's for, and what it can do. I think it would be great to think about when you have a set of authors who have done something really interesting on a timely issue. We can use my platform to help foster that discussion, or I'd love to think, I know if you're doing that yourself, I can keep amplifying it. We're at the end of our hour, which is this feels again like so many of my sessions here, like just the beginning. It's been great to have Beth Daley and Jennifer Weeks from the Conversation US here today. I want to let everyone know what this is. It's Thriving Online is the Monday sessions of my webcast called Sustain What, which started back in March in a rush during the first days of lockdown. Sustain What is a global online conversation identifying solutions to the complicated, shape-shifting, and epic challenges of humanity's great acceleration, which has been the last 50 years, Zoom mode for a species on a finite planet, and now, of course, the virus has imposed a great pause upon us, which has come with huge new challenges. A prime focus is making sense of, getting the most out of the planet's fast-forward information environment. It's what we're using right now to link with each other. It's the one Earth system changing faster than the actual environment. This webcast is produced as part of my work building Columbia University's new Earth Institute initiative on communication and sustainability. The daily mantra is, how do we make reality cool again? As soon as we're done, share the link you've been watching on with friends and circles far and wide. Get in touch with ideas. See the scrolling info bar at the bottom of the screen. Now, on Wednesday, doing a session with a young woman who's best known probably as a model. She's a really deep thinking author and environmentalist as well. She has a new book out, and she'll be on with one of the subjects of her book, Pat Brown, who was the founder of Impossible Foods, a Stanford biochemist who decided to get into the kitchen, and he's done it in a big way. So that's Wednesday. Friday, I'm doing a session that I haven't set up yet on the future of climate journalism. It's 1 year into the Covering Climate Now enterprise that the Columbia Journalism Review and The Nation launched 1 year ago. And we'll be talking with some great people about where do we go next with climate communication for impact. So thanks again to Beth and to Jennifer for being here. It's great.
Thank you so much.
We'll tweet this out too.
And do come back, okay?
Oh, yeah, bet. Mm-hmm.
We'll talk.